Well, today I am talking about loving yourself. And I picked this because, well, I'll just say that ministers, when we go to ministerial school, we're taught this thing that's like you give a talk after you've gone through something and you've mastered it. And then you talk about it. Well, I'm going to let you know I have not mastered this. I have not mastered this. Yeah. So I'm giving this talk for me just as much as I'm giving it for you. And what I know about myself is that oftentimes whenever I speak about things, I want to be more in integrity because I told you about it. And so therefore it helps me to be a better person for myself. So this talk is about self-love, and I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it. And what I recognize is I was very fortunate whenever I was growing up. I had two parents who were very, very loving. And I was fortunate enough to have parents who told me that I am beautiful and adored. And I know that many of you didn't have that. I've counseled lots and lots of people. And I recognize that that's more of a unicorn event than a common occurrence, which is too bad. But the world is changing and people are growing, and many of you have decided to be the place where change shows up, which is what happened to my mom, where she was like, I don't want to be treated like this, therefore I'm going to treat my child differently. And I'm grateful for that. And I also recognize that even with that, I grew up in a society where I got all these messages that whenever I loved myself, I was being selfish. And so I was struggling with this whenever I was writing this talk of like, well, how do I know if it's self-love, or how do I know if it's selfish? And sometimes that is confusing, especially whenever I've done things that I believe are an act of self-love and somebody tells me I'm selfish. So that's really where I was going with this talk today. And I wanted to bring in this idea of love because it's really important to kind of get where it's coming from. So we're a community of different religious faiths and belief systems, and we teach the New Thought tradition. Now, in the Judeo-Christian tradition, which is in the Old Testament for Christians, in the Torah for the Jews, there is a book of Genesis in the sacred book. And in that book of Genesis, it talks about how humans were created in the image and likeness of God, the Creator. And so many people switch it around. They think God is, built in the image of us. I mean, like we describe God as we describe humans versus us taking on the form of divinity and expressing that. And so when I think about that, I think about, well, what would I describe as the infinite great creator? I would describe it as love. As love. And oftentimes that's been a reminder of who I can be in this world. I often ask myself, what would love do? How would love be in this situation? Now, not everybody grew up with a version of God that was all loving. A lot of people grew up a version of God that was like judgmental, and they had rules, and you had to do certain things to be okay in the world. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that the infinite great creator is only love. And love is love is love. And I know when I'm tuned into love, and I know often, or I know that I'm forgetting to be tuned into love whenever I'm not. And I recognize those truths. In the Christian New Testament, there's stories of Jesus. And Jesus talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if you're not loving yourself very much, you probably are not loving your neighbor very much either. So it's really important to get to that place of self-love so you could even give from the overflow, because we can't give from a place of lack. We can only give a place of flowing over. So as I was thinking about all of this and the messages of love, I recognize that our teaching here in the New Thought teaching is we talk about philosophy and the string of truth that runs through all the main religions, and that string of truth says that we're all interconnected, that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And in quantum physics, it's the quantum field theory, that everything is connected to each other and that things can affect each other across time and space. But in the New Thought teaching, we talk about a universal energy or consciousness that connects all things, and that each and every one of us is part of a whole, which implies that the wholeness, a whole has inherent value. Like the wholeness is whole and complete within itself. And in that, to me, is divinity. Like the divine is the wholeness and the perfection and the completeness. And it's interesting for me to go into like the spiritual world and be tuned into that, but then also the human world where I have flaws and I forget my divine connection and I make mistakes and I wish I did better at communicating sometimes. And all of those things are great because we're human. And I think that it's just an evolution of our own wholeness where we remember that beauty that is within us. And it's like a mastery, you know? I'm here to master the love of God that I am, or the love of the infinite that I am. And that takes constant attention for me. And the way of mastery means that, you know, if you think of a violin master or piano master or anything like that, that people have to do things over and 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 over again in order to master it. People have to do that. And if you want to get to the mastery of self-love, you need to keep doing that over and over again. And so there's two ways that you can master self-love. One is spiritual practice, and two is self-care. Those are two ways that you can become a spiritual master of self-love. So in spiritual practices, one of the things that I do is sometimes practices with groups of people. So for instance, right now we're doing an online class. It's through our Spiritual Living Academy called 40 Days to Love, and I signed up for that. And there's about at least 50 or 60 people in this room and elsewhere who are taking this 40-day spiritual practice, 40 Days to Love. And what it is it's a video every day from Kathy Ann, and then there's an affirmation. And so every day I look at the video and I remind myself of love that I am, and then I speak the affirmation over and over and over again, and it gets texted to my phone so I have it so I can remember to do that. But I do that in a group of people so that I feel connected to the larger whole, and I feel like I'm a part of something big that's happening, but it transforms me internally. Other ways that I do spiritual practice is I do meditation, I do journaling. I spend time in nature. Now, I don't know about you, but when I go out in nature, I forget about the world, and I'm really appreciative of what is. I don't think about a deadline or what I'm supposed to be doing or anything. I notice the beautiful flower on the trail, and I see the moss getting even greener on the trees. And I love how there's like moss that grows on moss. I just love that here. It's so cool. I grew up in New Mexico, people. I was like, what? There's moss that grows on moss? And they have like, oh, it's so cute. It's really exciting. And so I love doing these things, but they're doing it for me because I need to remember myself. I took a commitment this year to really go into self-love, and it's been a practice. I've really had to work on it. Like, I will go on my everyday work day, and I will just work through the day, like with no breaks, and I love my job, so it's easy to do that, but then my body is not happy at the end of the day. I can't sit in front of a computer or be on the phone for 8 hours without moving my body. And so I did a very little thing, is I carved out lunchtime on my calendar so nobody would book any appointments during that time, including me, because I will book appointments. If I don't have lunchtime there, I will book appointments over my lunch. It's nobody else's fault, it's me. But I've done a commitment to myself this year that I'm really working on paying attention to those little things that make a big difference in my life. I had a really hard day the other day, and I was talking to one of my best friends who's also a minister, and I was like, I'm praying, I'm meditating, I am doing my walks, I'm taking my vitamins, I'm doing all the things, and I'm still feeling so crappy, and I'm processing through some grief. And, my friend said, how would you be feeling if you weren't doing all those things? Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I was like, oh. And that's true. It's like all of those things keep me afloat when I'm having challenge in my life. Now, everybody here is going to have challenge in your life. It's just going to be what it is. That's how life is sometimes. If somebody has a sickness, or somebody's going through life transition or a divorce, or a job change, or any of those things, they will cause challenge. Maybe you're not communicating well with a coworker or with a family member, and it's difficult. In order to move through those things with grace and move through those things, it's incumbent on you to really tap into self-love. So again, spiritual practice, and one of the things that's really important is to identify your needs. What nourishes you? What nourishes you? If you're to tend to the garden of your inner space, what nourishes you? In Hindu mythology, there's the goddess Lakshmi, and I love her. She is the goddess of good fortune and luck and abundance. She's like the goddess of riches, and she sits on a lotus flower. And the lotus flower symbolizes her inherent connection to the consciousness of who she is. And so it's like an inner stability that she has. And she nurtures that inner stability. And it's a reminder to all of us to be like Lakshmi, because when I'm nurturing that inner stability, that inner consciousness of love, when I'm nourishing my own garden inside of myself, then I tap into the source of all abundance. I tap into the source of all love. I tap into the source of all sweetness and joy. But I need to continue to nourish that garden. And so what is it that nourishes you emotionally? What nourishes you physically? What nourishes your mind and your spirit and your heart and your soul? And it's going to be different for everybody. But the things to look at are spiritual practices and self-care for yourself. So self-care, healthy habits, to prioritize a balanced diet, regular exercise, and quality sleep. I know this is not a surprise to you. But making it a priority, that is a question. Is this a priority in my life? It wasn't a priority in my life, and I'm making it a priority in my life. I'm making it a priority in my life because, again, I cannot give unless I am giving from the overflow. I cannot give from the lack. Because when I give from the lack, I'm just giving more lack. What else? Self-care, creative expression. What nurtures your creativity? What inspires you? I went to a friend's birthday party recently, and we got to paint rocks. And it was so much fun. like you think rock and paint and like how can that be fun? But it was really fun for me. I really dug it. And I recognize how much I don't spend time doing my creative expression, how much I don't spend time nurturing that aspect of self. Singing, oh my goodness, singing is beautiful nurturing of the creative expression. So everybody in the choir is nurturing that in themselves. And what happens when you nurture it in yourself? I mean, when the choir gives to me, I feel great. So whenever you nurture your own creativity, it's like when you're there, you give from the overflow, and it blesses and multiplies upon other people. I was thinking of one of my heroes, Maya Angelou, and she is an amazing human being, was an amazing human being in this planet. And she wrote a poem that I actually hadn't read before. It's called Phenomenal Woman. And I'm going to read you a couple lines. But I want you to know that she was writing this at a time when, number one, living in 100% patriarchal society, which we still are in, but not as much. And also living in the time of very extreme racism. Racism still exists, but she was experiencing it at a very profound degree. And also recognizing that just the color of her skin made people condemn her. So she's, to me, a pillar of resilience and excellence in this world. And so she felt societal bias, she felt racial bias, ageism, she experienced all of that. But she wrote this poem. I'm not going to read the whole poem, but the first lines I'm going to read to you. Phenomenal woman. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size, but when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say it's in the reach of my arms, it's in the span of my hips, it's in the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Yeah. And it made me think when I was thinking about her, this movement that came about, the Black is Beautiful movement. Now, that movement started in the late 60s and the early 70s. I wasn't alive, so I had to research it. And I found out that, of course, the reason why this movement, this Black is Beautiful movement, happened was because the construct of beauty at that time featured only white people. And on top of that, even the Black magazine, Ebony magazine, featured lighter-skinned Black women, as if that was the only construct of beauty. And many people had calmed their hair down. Many Black people had calmed their hair down to be more Eurocentric looking because they were required to in their jobs. And so there was a movement of letting your hair grow naturally and being in love with yourself exactly as you show up, every skin tone, every color. And that's what the Black is Beautiful movement did, not just for Black people, but I'm going to say for everybody. Because whenever I acknowledge a rose is beautiful, it doesn't mean that the orchid isn't beautiful. It means that the rose is accepting the beauty that it is. And if we could all get to that place of accepting the beauty and loving ourselves on who we are, that will make a huge difference in the world. You know, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I grew up in a very loving household, but I also am sad that I grew up in a society where age is not cool. Like, we were talking about this in my Steps to Freedom class, not in the class, but just before the class. It was Reverend Deborah Gay and I and our two TAs, and we were talking about how the construct of ageism still affects us. Like, it's there every day. There's images, there's conversations, there's these things like aging isn't okay. And, like I'm 45, everybody. I'm getting jowls. I have the little crinkles in my ears. I know you're, some of you are older than me, some of you are younger, but, like it's happening. And there's that whole thing like it's not okay. Or you're not appreciated or celebrated or loved because of where you are on the age spectrum. And it's amazing. That's still happening. That's still going around. And how can we be the place to embody being the place where love shows up within ourselves and where we can see it in every single person that we meet, regardless of their skin color or their wrinkles or any of that? I had a friend who was dyeing her hair, and I encouraged her to grow out her natural gray hair, and she did it, and it looked beautiful, and then people treated her badly. And so she dyed her hair again. She was like, I don't want to be treated like that. People are treating me like an old woman. I'm not an old woman. And so it's just interesting what we can do to each other. So who do we want to be in that? Do we want to be the place where love shows up? Or do we want to be the place where we're othering the other person? Now, I've been othered. I'm gay. I fell in love with a woman. I'm married to a woman. And the society that I grew up in and the church that I grew up in, that was not okay. It meant I was going to hell. It meant that I was sinning. And I don't understand how love can be a sin, but that's okay. And I was told all kinds of messages about how I was not okay and I was othered for that. Now, I bet you almost everybody in this room has been othered for something. Maybe your age, maybe your skin color, maybe your gender identity, maybe your sexual orientation. But it doesn't feel good. But what does feel good is whenever you love yourself and you express that love for yourself and it pours over onto others. And when I love myself, I get to the point where I can see that in others. See, there's a distinction between selfishness and self-love. And this is where I was really trying to get to, of like, what is that distinction? Where is that? When I'm practicing self-love, I'm stating healthy boundaries. I'm saying no in order to protect my time and energy, even though it might be disappointing somebody else. When I am practicing self-love, I am treating myself with kindness. I have words that I'm saying to myself that are loving and kind. When I am creating self-love, I'm celebrating my achievements. When I am in self-love, I'm learning from my mistakes and acknowledging myself with compassion. When I am in self-love, I'm serving without the expectation that I'm going to gain something, except the expectation that I feel good for giving myself to another. Now let's talk about selfishness. So selfishness is manipulating others to get what you want. So if anybody said to you that you owe them, that is selfishness. You owe them. Or making suggestions that you have not done as much work as they have done, and maybe you've done this to somebody else. How about this one? Being angry at somebody else's success. Yeah, I've done that. I've totally done that. And I'm like, you know what that stems from? That stems from a lack of self-love in myself. And so if you have done that, then it's time to start working on that self-love. Last night, I went to a birthday party, and there was this amazing food that I had, which was amazingly delicious. And I had a moment as I was eating this really deliciously, it's so good food. And And in the moment was, my body was saying, I am full, and my mouth was saying, oh my God, there's more on my plate. And I could tell you, the former habit of me was like, my mouth is gonna win that conversation. But last night, I acknowledged myself, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna keep that food, because I wanna eat it, but I'm just not gonna eat it right now, because I'm full. And I acknowledged my body, and I acknowledged where I'm at. And I can tell you my body loves me for that, because I listened to it. Now, how many of us are not listening to our bodies, or not listening to those messages of self-love, and we're ignoring that because we want to have something else? But it's worth it to take a stand for yourself. It's worth it. I know that sometimes, like, I really want to go out to a party, and what if my body isn't feeling good? But then I push myself to go to a party because I feel like I should for a friend. If you're shooting on yourself, you know something is indicated there. It's more important that you take care of yourself, and I promise you, your friend will love you even more for saying, I really need to take care of myself, and I still love you, and I can't come to your party. Your friend will still love you. So those things happen every day, and it's important to practice that discernment of really getting clear what is an act of love for myself. Another act of self-love is surrounding yourself with angels. And what I mean is people who actually see the truth of who you are. People who look into your eyes and they say, I love you and I see you, even if you're going through a hard time, and you're worth it. Now, that's the kinds of words that God would say. Any other message, you're not enough, you're not doing it, you're crappy, any words of, and I know you're saying these words to yourself, right? Those words that go through your head, those are not the words of God. The words of God are the words of adoration of yourself. Because God created you in its image, and it loves itself so much that it created the unique, beautiful spectrum of love that we are. As a matter of fact, it's kind of like a symphony. It's a symphony of love. Imagine that we are in a symphony where each instrument represents an aspect of creation. The planets, the oceans, the animals, the plants, the humans, every human being. And in this symphony, there's the conductor's baton, and that is the baton of love. And as the baton of love plays, each and every person has a different note. And when those notes move together in harmony, there is nothing more beautiful than that. But each and every person has to claim their own special note that is different from all the others in order for the symphony to play at its most magnificent level. And that's what I believe the invitation is for all of us this month, is to really claim our own beauty and our own note in our own symphony, and to sing it out loud in a way that supports and loves and uplifts another person. So I want you to join me in a self-love commitment ceremony. If you're willing, I'd love for you to stand, and I'd love for you to place your hands over your heart. And I'd like you to repeat after me. And I want you to mean it. I want you to think about the sacred symphony. And I want you to say, I honor the divine spark within me. I commit to treating myself with love. I commit to nurturing my spirit. I commit to my own growth. I release any negativity or self-doubt. I am open to receive and share the abundance of love that I am. I shine my unique light. And I participate in the symphony. And so it is. You may be seated. Let's pray. So recognizing and knowing that that symphony is ignited, inspired, remembered, and who each and every one of us are. That there is no othering, there is only remembering, putting the members of itself back together. And that is exactly what we are doing today. And so today I stand in a place of love. I stand in the place of revealing that highest good. I stand in the place of compassion, of revelation, of knowing that who I am is beautiful and sacred and holy exactly as I am and exactly as I am not. And today, as I remember that truth, I am able to give from the overflow. And in that giving from the overflow, each and every person is inspired by the love that they are. And so I know that this is like a spark, sparkles, a fire that is ignited like the sun, shining itself upon each and every one of us so that we can be part of that spectacular, joy-filled expression of love. As I know that truth, I settle into it, I accept it, I embody it, I am it, and I celebrate it, and so it is.